Okay, so this is part 3. So I just finished doing the sky. So you can see how I started with that color I mixed, which is a bit of cobalt with, or you can do ultramarine blue with phthalo blue and a bit of white, and you'll get this kind of lovely dark blue. And then to that I added white, and I just painted it kind of in strips. And then to that same paint I added more white to get this section. And then when you get to this part, you can see there's a little bit of a green coming through. So that's where I added a little bit of Hansa yellow and painted that. And then I added a lot of white to the color I had and a lot of Hansa yellow, but mostly white, titanium white. And I got this color. And then as I came down to the bottom here, this color in the horizon line is a mix of quinacridone, a little bit of quinacridone crimson, a bit of Hansa yellow and white. And it gives you this kind of warm color at the horizon line. So it's not perfect, but you can see the gradation in the colors, which I think looks pretty cool. And I've left my clouds just in the underpainting for now. I'm going to use white in a minute to kind of flesh them out, but I want to let this sky part dry. Otherwise, when I do the white, it'll pick up the blue and it won't look how I want it to. And then I started doing the rocks. So what I did is I painted this peninsula black, and then I just took my brush and dipped it in some white, and you're painting wet in wet. So when you do that, you just take your square brush and you just start painting little brush strokes, different directions. And what it does is it picks up the black with the white and it makes a gray. So this is one of those times when using black is good. And so now you can see this is going to be kind of the layers of the rocks that I want for my little peninsula here. So I'm going to let that dry. And the way I'm going to make my rocks look more realistic is I'm going to then look at my reference photo for inspiration, not for exact copying, because exact copying these rocks, you could do that, but it would take forever and no one's going to know the difference anyway. So just use it as an inspiration point to then go back later and add highlights and lowlights. So where there's going to be a crack in the rocks, you're going to put dark, more black maybe. Where there's areas where the light's hitting, you're going to come in and use a lighter shade. And then I'll show you how to use glazing. So glazing is a technique where you use your acrylic flow release, which I don't have with me right now, and you mix that with your more translucent paints. So what it does is it creates a clear tint that you can apply over top to create new colors and more detail. So for rocks, it's really neat because if this dries, you can see here that this little rock here is kind of a light gray, but because it has some titanium white in it, it's an opaque area. So if I take a clear layer of, say, I don't know, a little bit of, if I make like a lavender color, so if I use a little bit of ultramarine blue with a bit of quinacridone crimson, and then I add that to my glaze, if I glaze over that area, it'll tint this area and make it just a bit light kind of lavender gray. And if I look at my reference photo, what I'm going to do is push the color a little bit, so that'll make it look more interesting. So if I squint at it, which I'm doing right now, I can see that there's some lighter rocks kind of in this area, and they're almost like a light blue color. And then if I kind of just push the color a little bit, on the top here it's more lavenders, and here it's more light blues. So I'm going to do that, and then on my islands, I just did a few strokes in here where the highlights are. These are where the rocks are hitting the light. I think I'm going to push the color with the islands a little bit too. So the real color in the photo is kind of a gray. And what I'm going to probably do is transform it into a bit more of a lavender gray. And what that does is it just makes it look more interesting. I mean, you certainly can paint things the exact color that you have them in your photo. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I think that, remember, paintings are meant to be beautiful, and you're allowed to change the color if you think it will make it look better. The last thing I'm going to do when I'm done with the rocks is I'm going to paint in the little logs there. So I'm going to do a couple of those, and then the water. So we'll come back to the water many times to do the reflections and all of that. That's going to be lots of layers. And then over here, the reflections is going to be quite a bit of work. But again, this has to be totally dry, and I don't think it's quite dry yet, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer to do that. Okay.